good evening, good day, or whatever. I want to discuss the idea of pyramid construction or the variety of it because there's an awful lot of things on the net by very many amateur archaeologists and of you speaking about the difference between the Mayan pyramids in Central America, say, and the Great Pyramids of Egypt. And they're saying like that they're not such skilled. There's not such great skill in putting up the main pyramids up because of the type of stone there, rubble stone, and the ones in the Egyptian area are sort of smoothly cut and everything like that. But I think these people maybe have never built anything in their lives and they don't understand why the people who built the pyramids who had massive amount of skill and technique, never mind technology, it's the technique what matters. And they had the logistical skills to decide on which site and what building material and what technique they used according to the geology of the area, according to what stone or what rock was available in the area. Now, if it depends, and so I was a mason, and we call a refractory mason, and I worked in furnaces, but there's still the principle of masonry is exactly the same as there is has been for a very long time, or it used to be, and so you get the idea of why things are built according to the material available in the area. Now, in Egypt, and the difference in Egypt, yes, and some people are saying there's not as much skill in the pyramids in Maya, where the Mayans built, or the Aztecs who have built them, as there is in Egypt. Well, actually, that's totally not actually true, because it's a matter of the organization according to materials and labor, etc. Now, there's more skill involved in putting the face on that pyramids in Central America, with fabulous big pyramids there, pyramids of the sun, with all that uncut rock or slightly cut rock on the face. To do it that smooth and that level on that angle and get it to stay there and it didn't fall away, that's rather clever stuff, because they're using the engineering and the technical skill and the knowledge that there's a thing called the angle of incidence, which, as anyone would know, if you pile sand up to a certain, you can only pile sand up to such an angle and then it starts falling down. Well, somehow there's a limit to how you can lay your rocks on such an angle without suddenly having a bit of a trouble keeping them there on that slope. It starts to get a difficulty. Once you get beyond a certain angle towards the upright, then you start gravity taking over and you have more of a difficulty holding your rocks in place. But getting them on a smooth plane across that face with all those different rocks, that's an immense amount of patience and skill to do that. To select those rocks for the time there's an art in that alone. But the difference, as you say, is the difference of logistics. In the Great Pyramid of Giza, where all the rocks were pre-cut, you have to ask yourself a very good question. If you're going to start building that thing, you have to start for a couple of years in advance and cut a lot of your rock, a lot of your stone, you're going to cut and get ready before you start laying it. You're going to have it laid because you need to know, especially when you're doing your passages and all that in it, you need to know your layout beforehand. It's each layer that had a plan, in other words, for each layer of rock, each layer of cut stone, they had a plan. And that's how in each layer they had and that's how people think, oh, the mystery, how did they build these chambers up and where they built them, so precisely in their angles. Well, if you worked on furnaces, you get exactly the same problem, a geometric puzzle in some furnaces and floors as you would in a pyramid, exactly the same, because you have to have things have to line up on a particular angle. So each layer of stone laid or masonry piece laid has got to be planned in itself. Each level has its own separate plan, in other words, which then makes so it's a layers or laminated plan. Each plan for each layer for the course of stones for the pyramids had a plan in itself, all the way up through to the top. They would have had a plan, especially anywhere where there was a passage, and they had to do that. So therefore they had to make the stone up, which created these passages accordingly, and you could fill in behind them. The thing is, though, when it comes to building the large pyramids of Giza, it's far easier for unskilled guys. The skilled guys in cutting, the skilled guys are cutting, but the unskilled guys banging them in, just put them down because they're already cut perfectly flat on top. They're cut to a perfect, each course is cut to a perfect height, otherwise your pyramid would suddenly get out of level, and you couldn't get your angles up each corner of the triangles. You couldn't get them perfectly aligned like they have. If your pyramid suddenly started getting out of level. So that's the fabulous part about the pyramid of Giza, is that they kept each course so amazingly level throughout the whole thing. That is one of the greatest achievements in building, in that building, and that's as great an achievement as any other factor about it, whether it was set out with a Sarian or wherever it was set out by, keeping it dead level throughout all the height of it, and keeping those angles on those corners exactly right throughout all the height of it, was such a fabulous achievement. But so it was all done beforehand. Each course was done and designed on the ground before it was began, and they had to do that. Otherwise you have to say, I think I have to question. Sorry, I've got to watch my cat. I'd have to ask the question, when they built this, so people are asking how it built. The logistics of it is a question we need to answer, not whether they use a ramp or whatever, which doesn't make sense. But in itself, because there's other ways of moving the stones up the side of those pyramids with slides and pulleys, which makes much more sense, because these people are extremely clever people. They weren't dumb people who built all the pyramids, extremely good at organisation. We know they understood the pulleys, so they would have. My suggestion is they used pulleys to pull the rocks up pieces of wood. They slid them up pieces of greased piece of wood and pull them up with using a pulley. But that's one thing, and they could have used weights, counterweights to pull them up as well. So that to me makes more sense than using masses of labour to break their backs, getting them up, because you're doing a lot of damage to your workforce. And now, how do you get the labour supply to keep it up if you're going to injure them throughout the years and years of process of building it? And I'm suggesting all the time that people who build it are extremely clever people. So they would have and human people. They wouldn't understand destroying your workforce by labouring it or making it work too hard is not going to get your job finished, because you can't replace your labour. And that's one aspect of it. But the aspect of it is that the great is getting each course cut beforehand, like cut on another site would have been the preparation site for this pyramid, is where they cut and sort each layer. Otherwise, you don't know where you're going with your passages, and yes, you have to lay it down with your marks and chalk marks each one, but you have to have each course worked out. Each course had its own plan, and that was all done a long time before they start laying it, before they start actually building it. They would have to have an awful lot of this already prepared. In my book, I was going by past experiences on doing rather complex work in Kokovans, for instance, where extremely complex bit of masonry down through the walls of the coke ovens, where it's all pipes and tubes and all different shaped blocks. It's hundreds of different shaped blocks. You have to have each course has got its own plan. And you have to sort that out beforehand. The labour and that sorts that out beforehand. The people mould it somewhere, their own moulded pieces, and then the labour sorts it out. The logistical managers sort it out. The flow chart, if you like, of where when each course is delivered, and then your people, we have to put it in with reasonable skill, because there's a mortar bed involved, and it's got to keep pretty precise. But laying the pyramids themselves, the brunt of it was no skill whatsoever. They just banged them in and banged them against each other. Maybe you use big rubber mallets and knocked them against each other. It's one suggestion I may have done. I've tapped them up. That sort of makes sense. And that just gives an indication that although the skill in cutting the stones and working out the logistics of the plan, each plan and all that, is a high degree of technical skill, laying the pyramid itself is not that much skill, apart from the major, the king's chambers and all that's got to be dead precise. The rest of it isn't that, it doesn't have to be that precise, because you're cutting your face accordingly. You just cut your face in. You go up to your face, you have a line going down, and you cut up to your face accordingly, and you cut the face box in according to what's required. And that's how you do it. There's skill in that, and there's measurements and geometry. And it's true masonry. But in this case of the Aztecs, it's just equally as challenging, if not more so, to get a pile of rocks up to stay up for a start all those years, to get those rocks to stay up with our rubble for all those years. That is a considerable engineering challenge in itself. It's because they didn't have the type of stone that was available on the plateau, or the Giza plateau in the Mayan. They used what stone was available, and it's called intelligence. They're intelligent people who built these things. They weren't dummies. They weren't politicians we have today. They were really, really clever organisers, and they were brilliant to do what they did in the pyramids in Mexico. Was just a phenomenal bit of organisation, as equal to anything in Giza, even though it's done in a different style of material. It's extremely labour-intensive process, but getting the face of that up and getting the angles of those pyramids, and they're rustic pyramids, when people say, oh, they're roughly, look, it's not high technology, it's not being cut precise and all that. Well, I'm suggesting these people I'm just suggesting they've not got any building experience to making statements that really aren't qualified by anyone who's ever built anything with stone. Then you can say, well, hang on, how would I build that in stone? I know that the greater difficulty in actually is building the one in Mexico than it is in the one in Egypt, because of the challenges. A different one. The challenge in Egypt is like a Lego block set. You've got your Lego block set. Here's your Lego blocks. You bang them in. It all fits in. Your kids can put them in. But when you've got a bunch of rubble and you've got to put it in so that stays level and all goes up on those angles, and all those angles faces the perfect angles, I take my hat off to those people, because that's absolutely genius. The masons who built the pyramids in the Mayan pyramids and all that are absolutely brilliant. That's a greater degree of endurance and patience with building those in the Central America than it is in building the pyramids of Egypt. And it's just my opinion as a mason. Now, what I did, I built a small pyramid out of rocks. And so, how do I build a pyramid? I want to build one. So, how do I build one? I built one out of rocks, because I've got plenty of rocks in my garden. And I thought, well, I'll have a go at building one. I want a metre square at the bottom, 4 metres, a metre by a metre. And about you know, a metre or so high, metre to 200 high. But how's it work? But, you know, to do it out of bricks and cut it would have been easy. Bang! I could have got out a bunch of bricks, cut it up, banged all the bricks up, cut them in accordingly, get me saw out, and cut them out with me hammer and chisel if you like, and cut them out and just banged them in. No problem at all. But when you're building a pyramid out of loose rocks, and you want your face to get on a perfect angle without mortar, that takes patience. That is really, my goodness, you start to think for a bit. You don't have to think when you've got a piece made out of perfect pieces, like a Lego set. Well, as long as you know which pieces go and you measure them right, they'll just fall into place. But when you've got a bunch of rocks of no particular shape or size, and you've got to get them precisely fit in place, then you've got to go, wow, we weigh up each piece you put in. Is it going to fit? You need a lot of rocks to find out which one fits. You need a lot of rocks available to find out which one fits where. And you've got to take these rocks all the way up these massive pyramids. So I'm suggesting that before anyone makes any more comments about the rustic looking or the rough looking pyramids in the Mayans compared with ancient archaeology, which is high technology, I'm suggesting they should refrain from making such statements, because they're speaking and it's sort of guessing in a way, and it's not looking at how, as a builder in stone, how would you do it, and what the technical difficulties are on each particular building. Material, well, you can cut easily. All that limestone, well, you can cut that easily. All that stuff you can't cut. It's just whatever it is. It's in small lumps. It's available in those sort of areas. Well, you use that. And I'm suggesting people are not looking at these from a sort of qualified position, but they're sort of getting a bit excited over something without considering maybe they should ask a few masons how they would do it. They might find some sensible answers.